Welcome to NIFTY's Targeted PD Seminar Series. The purpose of these seminars is to provide a review in content, instructional activities, and NIFTY best practices. These seminars are useful for teachers who have recently gone through NIFTY University, as well as for veteran teachers looking for content and teaching refreshers. On this webinar, we will discuss creativity in the classroom. By viewing the seminar, you will be able to describe the benefits of creative thinking in the NIFTY classroom, explain how to use creative thinking to generate ideas, and identify NIFTY best practices and suggestions for teaching the learning objectives for this unit of learning. Let's review NIFTY's units of learning. NIFTY has 4 units of learning, and in this seminar we will look at the first, Opportunity Recognition and Business Structure. Students learn about creativity specifically in Chapter 6, Section 1. Although the text does not go into depth on creative thinking specifically, NIFTY does offer activities and presentations like this one to support the concept of idea generation in Unit 1. Let's take a moment to review the learning objectives for this unit of learning. In order to complete the business plan, students will need to identify a business idea that fulfills a want or a need that is not being met by an existing business, structure a business logically and appropriately, explain the relationship between the entrepreneur, the business, and his or her community. What's missing? Where's creativity in all of this? Creativity is a skill that students will use throughout the business planning process, and it starts with this unit, and specifically with objective number 1, identifying a business idea to solve a problem. That's the main purpose of the business plan. But what's important for us to think about is how we can use some of these skills and tools throughout the business planning process. So why is creativity important in the entire NIFTY learning process? Because it's about tapping into our students' imaginations and putting their imaginations to work. Encouraging creative or lateral thinking in students challenges them to look at situations in a new way and to find new solutions and questions and innovations for their business plans. Creativity engages the right side of the brain, and this is a good balance to what we traditionally use in schools, which is the left side of the brain, the critical thinking or the organizing side. Entrepreneurial learning relies heavily on engaging both sides of the brain equally. One of the ways we engage the right side of our brain is through idea generation, and specifically brainstorming. Here's an example of an activity you can use in your classrooms. Take a minute and have students think about how many business ideas are possible for this pushcart. Have students record as many ideas as possible. The key here is to have them not judge their ideas, but to list as many as possible. To do this, you may want to institute a time limit. This will help focus students for the task at hand. We'd recommend having students try this individually first for 1 to 2 minutes and then working together in small teams or pairs. This is because we want to make sure every student has the opportunity to engage the right side of their brains. Take a minute now and see how many answers you come up with. So how many answers did you come up with? Here are some answers students came up with. Take a look at them. They're not your traditional pushcart businesses. They're actually very innovative. When sharing this with students, it's not about them judging their business ideas or about the business opportunity itself, but about the general idea of brainstorming and looking at things from different perspectives. This way, they can find new problems and new solutions for those problems. You can use this activity or similar activities as a do now and repeat them over and over. The more students have practice with brainstorming, the easier it becomes. Other items you can use include pens, rubber bands, paper clips. The idea here is to get them to be in the practice of thinking outside of the box. But brainstorming is just one way to practice creative thinking, as are icebreakers or brain teasers. Sometimes the lack of structure in these activities can make it challenging to manage in the classroom, and they can just continually go on and on and on. Another way to look at the idea process is to consider 2 sub-processes. One is what is the question, and 2 is what's the answer. In the first sub-process, you discover the problems and ask more questions to get a plan of action and solutions. This is generally linked to mind mapping. What's the answer is about thinking backwards, taking what we think and what we know from prior knowledge or areas of expertise and turning our assumptions on their heads. In this seminar, we will focus on challenging those assumptions or thinking backwards. For mind mapping, you can take a look at the Nifty University presentation. Here's an easy way to organize the thinking backwards process. Note, part of the creative process is allow some deviation. We provide these structures for you more as a template to adapt for your classroom needs. Our steps include stating your challenge or the solution. This should be a statement rather than a question. List out all the assumptions that you have based off of the challenge or solution. Write down the opposite of each and ask yourself how to accomplish each reversal. For all these steps, it's important to write these down on paper. As a mental exercise, it becomes hard to manage and to organize. Let's look at the next slide for an example. So let's take a look at our example of starting a restaurant. Here I stated that I want to create a one-of-a-kind restaurant. But even if I had just listed restaurant, that would have been okay. Now I'm going to list my assumptions. Restaurants have menus, restaurants sell food, and restaurants have tables. There are lots more, but for our purposes, I listed 3 here. Write down the opposite of each one. It's important here to write down the exact opposite of each one, rather than wordsmithing it. So here I have restaurants do not have menus, restaurants do not sell food, and restaurants do not have tables. Now, just looking at the opposites of these, we may think that's kind of strange. Restaurants do sell food, and that's a reversal that's impossible to sort of come up with. That's not the point of this exercise. Part of it is to think about ways in which we can achieve some of these reversals. And we may not be able to have reversals for every single one, but that's okay. So let's start with the first one. Restaurants do not have menus. For step 4, I'm going to ask myself how I'm going to accomplish that one. One way could be that I only sell one type of food or one item, so I don't need a menu. There's just one that's posted on a sign or something. Restaurants do not sell food. Now this reversal seems like the one that's toughest in my list. I'm not sure how I'm going to get around selling food because I'm going to have to sell something for sure. And I'm also going to have to generally sell food or food product. But maybe I could get around that by thinking about it as not food, but smoothies or drinks. Restaurants do not have tables. I could just be a takeout place, or I could be a food cart where people just pick up their food and go. The more practice you and your students have with these kinds of activities, the better. You can start each one of your classes with a Think Backwards challenge for a week, or have students do this kind of exercise for homework. This activity doesn't really require time limits, but establishing one can help move this activity forward and getting students to a place of resolution. So now that we've looked at some activities to teach creative thinking, let's look at the overall instructional flow for the unit of opportunity. Every Nifty learning process starts with experiential learning activities. This is key to get students to learn by doing. For this unit of learning, those include the product innovation activity, invention contest, brain teasers, the community walkabout, and the opportunity recognition game. Specifically for creativity, the first 3 are important. What's important for these creative exercises is to have students reserve judgment. The idea here is to get them thinking again about as many ideas as possible and solutions rather than judging them. You should start this process as early as possible, in chapters 1 and 6. But as we discussed earlier, these types of exercises can be useful for any problem solution point in the planning process. For guided instruction, you can have students look at case studies and other examples. Here, exemplar business plans can be really useful, as well as Ava's Edibles case study. To assess learning, you can use Performance Task 1A, as well as the business plan workshop component. So here you can actually have students look at the activity rubrics, things that they've actually produced, and have them look at their creative aspects throughout the process. And then finally, the most important aspect is the application to the business plan. Students should use their own work and their business plans as a demonstration of learning and of practicing creative thinking. Here are next steps we recommend as follow-up to this session. Reread chapters 1 and 6. In addition to being more content review, it'll give you a lot of great examples and practice that are within the text, as well as give you an overall understanding of how to pace the unit of learning so that you can give enough time to create the creative process and thinking in your classroom. Review the presentation from Nifty University. That's day 1, PowerPoint 7. You can also review a specific targeted seminar on mind mapping. That's a pre-recorded webinar that you can access on Nifty Connect or through your program office. You can also look through the experiential activities and assessments for additional support in this unit of learning. Each experiential activity lesson plan includes modifications, and the assessments are a great template for you to use and develop additional performance tasks to assess and gauge where your students are. Lastly, your greatest resource is your Nifty Program Manager. Through your Program Manager, you can access additional case studies, best practices from other teachers, and invite guest speakers that can be valuable to talk to students about the creative process. Thank you for your time. We hope that you found this targeted PD on creativity useful and hope you'll share some of your best practices with other teachers in the Nifty network through Nifty Connect.